Oh yeah. I love that beat. I love that beat. All right, party people. Whew, my goodness. All right. Okay. Man. All right. I'm gonna be on here about an hour or so. I see you signed up, my man. We gonna rock and roll tomorrow at for the notary certificate training. Thanks for signing up. We gonna make this thing pop and all of that. So if you haven't signed up, information is in the description. Um, After I talk to y'all tonight, hopefully y'all should realize how important knowing your state laws, understanding how to properly notarize, what's allowed, what's not allowed, and more importantly, being able to stand 10 toes down on what you know is right in accordance with your state laws. I'm serious. That's my wife. What's going on, babe? I told her I ain't gonna be up here too long because she's doing some cooking, and I know I gotta help her with some cooking down there. Not that she can't cook, but gotta do the dishes and all of that, get everything cleaned up for Shabbat tomorrow. So try to get all that done. And then I also still need to go to the grocery store tonight. Um, Grab a few little things, need some more bananas and all that kind of stuff. So we ain't gonna be up here too long. However, feel free to ask any questions, throw them in the comment section. Like my man Frank said, hit that like button. Greatly appreciate it. So I'm gonna just hop right on into it, and everybody else will just have to catch the replay and all of that. So, all right, where's my paper? Where my notes at? All right. So I had some things that happened this week. It was crazy, and these are acts that notaries can just do on their own, or they could be somewhat influenced to do. And we have to be able to say no to them, because if not, we'll get our hind parts in a lot of trouble. So, one of the issues that I came across this week was I meet with this guy. We'll say his name is Robert. Okay. So on the document it said Robert. In the order it said Robert. On the document it said everything is Robert. I get there, he hands me his driver's license, and honestly, I didn't notice it off the back. Trying to think. We'll go Robbie, something short. Robbie. And his driver's license said, instead of Robbie, it said Ruiz. That's his first name, Ruiz. For whatever reason, I didn't pick up on it. I don't know why. I know I was focused, sort of ripping and running that day, and I just didn't notice it. Then next thing I know, I'm about to do the first notarization. Now, my thing is every time I go to do a notarization, especially my very, very first one, I reflect back on what I saw on the driver's license. And when I looked at his name and I reflected back in my mind what I saw on the driver's license, I said, whoa, something ain't right. Driver license said Ruiz. This says Robbie. Two different things. Come to find out, this gentleman had been going by Robbie for the last 45 years. I don't know how old he is, but for the last 45 years, he's been going by Robbie. I'm like, then why is your driver license saying Ruiz? He said, oh, I had to go get a updated driver's license, and they told me I had to get the real ID. And on the real ID, for the real ID, I had to give them my birth certificate, and Ruiz is on my birth certificate, so they made my driver's license that. This gentleman has bank accounts in Robbie, have gotten jobs in Robbie, Social Security is in Robbie, bought the house that he's selling in the name Robbie, but his real name is Ruiz. How the heck am I supposed? And the crazy part was that when I contacted the signing company, and then they contact the title company. The title company was basically like, yeah, we understand that, and we good with it. We good with you notarizing Robbie. I'm like, but how can I notarize Robbie when he didn't present ID to me? Well, basically saying, well, we cool with it because we know who he is and we got this information and that information. I'm like, but I don't have the information. I don't have anything that tells me he is Robbie. And this is not, gotta stop shots. This ain't bumping. This ain't his legal name. So I'm sitting here like, if this isn't his legal name, hit that like and hype the video. If he is not legally known by Robbie, then how am I supposed to do this? So they was asking me, still trying to get me to do it, and I had to respectfully decline. And they was like, "Well, we understand if you don't feel comfortable." I said, "I don't feel comfortable doing something illegal." And I said, I said, "I know what is legal, but it's incumbent upon the title company to show me how I can legally do this." Order got canceled. It came back out the next day. I couldn't do it anyway. So I don't know who did it, how they got it done, but I was like, I'm done. I'm like, I can't do this because the name that he has to sign in and I have to do the notarization on, their first names aren't the same. Last name is the same, all of that, but not the first name. Prior to that, that same day, through the same signing company, I had another order with them. And in that order, and I did the order, I was able to complete it, but in that order, it had information that said I have to provide them a copy of the notary journal. I'm gonna see if I can find. I think I have a copy. I did a screenshot of that. It said I have to give them a copy of my notary journal. Hold on, let me open this so I can zoom in and show y'all what I'm saying because I'm not lying to y'all. I don't want y'all because people are like, nah, come on, Griff, you got to be joking. I'm telling you. So let me hit. I forgot to set my share up and everything. I was ripping and running so daggone much. And all right. So let me hit this. Let me hit that. Let me do that. All right. So there we go. Right here. Notary must provide a copy of their notary journal. The notary must provide a copy of their notary journal. Notary must provide a copy of their notary journal. I'm like, you talking about a single entry or the whole journal? How the heck am I going to do that on the whole journal? I was like, I don't know. And I had to explain to them that I'm not legally allowed to do that. And like, nah, this just not gonna happen. Signing company came back and said, okay, no problem. And see, in this case, it's not the signing company that's the issue, it's the title company, it's the client, it's their client that is asking me to do this. And see, here's the dynamics. Their client, my client, which is the signing company, has a client which is the title. I'm supposed to be beholden to do what the signing company says, my client, and the signing company is beholden to do what their client, the title company, says. So if the title company comes back and says, we want the notary to do this, they're just a conduit to pass that information on. It's not their role, or they may not think it's their role, or they may not want it to be their role to try to correct the improper notarial act that is about to be done. They may say, hey, that's going to be you. Either you do it or you don't. We're just in between. We're not going to get in it, this, that, and the other. That's what some signing companies have told me, either directly or indirectly through their actions of not standing up for the notary. Okay. Then fast forward to the one with the Robbie versus Ruiz gentleman. They was like, hey, this is what they want to do. Either they like they cool with it. Are you uncomfortable? And that's the thing I keep telling y'all. They always ask you, are you uncomfortable or are you refusing? And I'm not uncomfortable doing what's legal. If I'm uncomfortable with anything, it would be breaking the law. So I'm uncomfortable with that. And they may not even realize, but the way they're saying it is if what we're asking you to do is actually okay. And the reason why it's okay is because the title company said that they're cool with it. And I'm like, then where does state law come in? See, I love the notaries here. Y'all are fighting for all of this other recognition and respect, but nobody is fighting to follow their state law. And what they will say, oh, well, that's up to each one individual notary. Well, if it's up to me to figure out how to follow my own state law, wouldn't it be up to me to figure out my own pricing? But y'all want us to join together and band together to get an extra $5, $10, or $20 on general notary fees, the state notary fee. But who's standing up to for us against lenders and title companies that are clearly asking us to do illegal acts? No one. None of these people. And they're like, well, hey, it's all right, And I'm like, no, we need to fight for that, in my opinion. The money will come. I'm not worried about $10 or $20 notarial stamp fee because I don't do that much general notary work. You see what I'm saying? Right. You said we stand up for ourselves, and I don't have a problem standing up for myself, but there's this movement that everybody wants to stand up for everything, but let's make sure the title company don't have the notaries doing anything wrong. Who can the notaries call on? And you can say the NNA and the guild and the coalition all you want, but they're not going to stand up because all they're going to say is, well, if you again don't feel comfortable working with that company, don't. I'm like, why do we have to not feel comfortable with somebody? Why can't we just do things the right way? We're expected to do things the right way, but nobody else is. And then if you push back and say, well, I'm not supposed to do that, and I show you chapter and verse that I can't, then it's, oh, you're blacklisted and you can't do this, you can't even do this business no more. That's not right. And nobody wants to stand up for that. But you want to fight and argue and petition for some dollars, but not the integrity of the actual business and industry. Why not? And yes, it's a much harder fight, but I think it'll be a better fight to have than to say, give me some more money. Because here's what people don't realize. When people pay you more money, they expect you to be more obedient. The more money they pay you, the more obedient they expect you to be. So when you start asking for more money, they're going to be like, then you need to shut up and do more of what we say because I'm paying you to do what I'm saying. That's how some people think. I'm paying you to be obedient to what I'm asking you to do, or not even asking, telling you to do. I'm telling you, notarize that, but the names aren't the same. We're fine with that. Do it. I'm like, we're paying you all this money, so shut your hind parts up and go do it. And y'all don't think that these companies are like that out here, but they are. They are. They're like this. So then today, I get a closing, and the next thing I know, I get there, and the person's first name is correct. We'll say Susan. Susan, like Susan Smith. And then I get there and I share with her, I said, well, in the documents, they want you to sign Susan Smith and Susan Jankowski. Okay. And she said, well, okay, that's fine. I used to be Smith, but now I'm Jankowski. Oh, okay, cool. The ID says Jankowski. I said, but the bulk, all of the documents want you to sign as Susan Smith. Where's your ID for Susan Smith? I'm no longer Susan Smith. So in this case, the first name is the same, the last name is different. And I'm going back and forth with the signing company, what or the title through the signing, and the title and the signing company finally stepped in and was like, when they looked at the documents and started looking at notary law, the signing company was like, nah, we can't do that. The notary can't do that because she does not have, y'all want her to sign all of the documents as Susan Smith and just do AKA as Susan, whatever heck I said, Romanowski, whatever I said, you know, no, that's not going to work. It's not going to work. And I guess they didn't, either they found somebody else or they trying to figure something else out. And one of the things I shared with the signing company, I said, well, my thought is, and what I've always been taught, if you got time to do it wrong, you got time to do it right. So instead of, hey, fix it like this and do that, and what about just redo it? And then I found out something interesting is that they said, well, you could use credible witnesses. I'm like, yeah. They said, but unfortunately, that has to be approved. And I'm like, and I've heard of that before. Reason why is because they want a copy of the ID in the name that they're signing in. But if they don't, so it violates or goes against their compliance part. So fortunately, the signing company stepped up and was there for me, and I was like, all right, cool, So they will ask you to do these illegal things. Let me see what some of the comments are saying here. I just had the same thing happen to me yesterday. Tyler wanted me to use AKA statement. I declined. Right. And see, sometimes they say, well, just because it's in the AKA statement, and see, this is the big thing that some of these trainers misinform you on, thinking that, oh, well, just if it's in the AKA statement, and I did a video about that a couple of weeks ago, if this other name is there, then it's fine. No, what my notary law said, it says I have to have photo ID, military, state ID, driver's license, passport, etc., etc. It doesn't say this other stuff. Y'all can have that. We can't. It said, I just had a breakthrough this week. And there is truth to when you do good on small things, then signing companies will trust you with other assignments. That is correct. I went to an assignment today who canceled. Yeah. If you go out there and do your part, it'll work out. Case in point. So I lost out on money today because of that thing. And I think it was for 75 and I only got a $40 trip fee. The next thing I know, I see an order come out for 125 for this evening for 5 o'clock. I was like, I'm already booked at 5:30, so I can't. I said I could probably do it at 7. I didn't realize it was Iran. So when I'm talking to my wife and I see an email, I'm like, oh, let me check this email. I had got assigned the order for 7 p.m. I didn't realize that. I didn't hear my notification or whatever. And then I look at it and I'm like, I recognize the name of the sign. I was like, wait a minute. Every time I done one with him, it's Iran. And sure enough, it's Iran. So now I'm like, okay, I gotta scramble. Knock out my 5:30 and then get home, prep the docs, and then do that. And I got it done. And that was for 125. So I made up the money more than what I lost. I made it up by being available. And you just have to sometimes trust it. And then there was another situation, and I'm trying to remember because I had so much going on this week. Oh, yeah. Dating the document. So let me show y'all, and I still got to finish that video for y'all members about the Claude. using a different AI tool or just adding another AI tool to my repertoire. So this particular AI tool is called Claude. Um, some of you might be familiar with it because it's being used in the war right now to target people and everything. I'm not using it for that. So this is, and I'm going to give y'all the create a public link. So I'm gonna drop this link in here. Claude journal copy. Hope that's better. And this here is what I did, what I researched. And I want y'all to look at it because so y'all can see how I asked the questions and all of that and everything in the conversation back. So I said, good evening. I was just asked by a title company after I finished with a mortgage closing that I need to provide them a copy of my notary journal. I was under the impression that I can only do that per a court order. Please advise the legality of a notary giving a copy of a notary journal to a title/escrow company. And then it said, this is genuinely important question. Your instinct is generally right. Most states restrict who can access a notary journal, and simply handing over a copy to a title company upon request is not standard practice and could actually expose you to legal liability. And it talks about what the NNA says, and then the Graham-Leach-Belly Act, which deals with protecting non-public personal information. It goes on to talks about the non-public personal information and what the Secretary of State say. This is typically when the Secretary of State and all that. Well, further on in here, as I started asking it more and more questions, I said, what does Virginia say about providing a copy? It says Virginia does not require traditional notaries to keep a journal at all. And because of that, what this is saying is that the journal is not considered state property. Now, I still got to go and research it. I'm just telling you what it said, and that the journal will be considered more personal property of the notary. So we don't necessarily have to hand that over. And then it gives us the bottom line of Virginia statutes do not contain explicit provisions authorizing a notary to provide a journal copies to a title company, nor do they explicitly prohibit it in any way like Illinois does. So some states prohibit it. However, the absence of authorizations combined with the GLBA privacy obligations and the exclusive control requirement means you have no legal obligation to comply with the title company's request, and doing so could expose you to liability. This is why we have to go and do this research, y'all. It's more than just about getting paid a whole bunch of money. It really is. So, and then I just said, so thank you for your help. So, one of the other things that I had, and let me go back to some of the comments real quick. It said, bingo, not providing anything without proper authority involved. If they pass it to the client, it's a lot of liability. That is right. Afterwards, I accepted another assignment with the same company, and accepting I have been on yes status all day with another assignment. They probably assigned it to someone already. I'm probably next. That is good. What's going on, Notary Giant? And I stand up for yourself. Yeah, we do have to stand up for ourselves. And then it says, someone told me to go to an assignment. I told them to withdraw me. Yeah. I just had the lender pressure. I had a lender pressure the title company to pressure the signing service to pressure me. I'm gonna see it to cross over a name and initial on already executed and stamped. That's a new one on me. That's a new one. This is the kind of stuff that's going on out here. See, you got to be look. There's all kind of training going on. Everybody wants to do training on loan signing agent to be a loan signing agent, but does it cover handling this kind of stuff? Because when you get into this kind of stuff, because that's a part of doing the loan closings, being asked to do stuff illegal, where's your trainer at then? What is your trainer going to say and do for you then? Are they really going to back you up? Are they really going to be there for you? Can you call them to get some kind of help and some guidance? That's the thing. And most times, no, they don't want to deal with that. They're like, oh, no, no, no. I'm just teaching you how to be a loan signing agent, how to walk them through the documents and point their little things on. No, that's all they want to teach you. And then they sit there, whoo, boy, I made all this money, didn't have to do a closing. I'm telling you, watch how much they charge you. They charge you the price of a closing or darn near the price of a closing. Look at the price of what they're charging you, calling it a discount, calling it a deal. And all they're doing is charging you what they want to get for a closing, but they can't get for a closing. Okay. And I don't care if they like what I'm saying, because when you look at it, that's just the truth of the matter from what I'm seeing. Okay. Now, this next thing that they did, another signing company. Whew, oh my goodness. I was asked, I got the documents, and as I was prepping them the night before, I look at the documents and I notice that I realized, I said, wait a minute, they got this is on the 12th. They wanted it dated for the 13th, or it was pre-dated for the 13th. The problem is this: the person who I'm meeting is the buyer. And I've always been told by lenders, title, escrow, as well as real estate agents, the sale has to happen first before the buyer can sign. So in other words, you cannot buy something that has not been sold. How are you saying you're buying a property on the 12th when the closing for the seller is on the 13th? You are the buyer buying a house and signing it on the 12th. And what did they tell me? Oh, well, the lender wants all the dates to be the 13th. I said, but this is the buyer. How can they buy something that has not been legally sold? Yeah. And when I brought that out to them and I told the signing company, and they was like, and thanks, Greg, for the super chat. I really appreciate that, man. Appreciate that. I was like, nah, there's no way I can do this. So what I did was I called a local title company that I do direct work with, and I asked them, and they was like, oh, no, no, no. They said, walk away from that. They said, no, no, no. You cannot do that. They said, nah. Everything got to be dated for when that buyer signs, which is the 12th. And I was like, that's what I thought. So what I did, I had a conversation with my little buddy Claude. Follow me on this, y'all. So me and Claude had a nice little conversation. Let's zoom in a little bit more. And I said, okay, I said, I have a real estate closing with a person that is buying a house in Tennessee, but the closing is taking place in Virginia Beach on March the 12th, 2026. The lender wants the documents dated by the buyer for March the 13th. As a notary, regardless of the state, can I do a closing where affidavits, deeds, and other documents are being dated in the future? Now, there are certain caveats to that when it comes to the seller but I'm not going to get into that. This here is for the buyer. This is an important question. I want to give you clear, direct answer, though I'm not an attorney. So please consult a real estate attorney, a notary attorney if you need legal advice. Short answer, no. The core issue broken down. What's legally permissible versus what's being asked. There is an important distinction between the two different dates. The document effective date. This can be a future date. A document can be written with a future effective date that is generally not prohibited. The signer's signature date and notarial certificate date, these must always reflect the actual date of the signing took place. Since you are performing the closing on the 12th, both the buyer's signatures and your notarial certificate must be dated for the 12th, not the 13th. Why this matters? Because the signatures cannot be a date in the future. It's impossible to notarize a signature on the 12th if the signature wasn't made until the 13th. The discrepancy between the signature date and the notarization could cause the document to be rejected. So I went through, and let me share this with y'all so y'all can have this. And this is again Claude future doc date. This is what's going on out here. All right. See, other trainers can't tell you this stuff because they ain't out here doing no closings. They don't even know what the heck a closing is nowadays. That's how out of touch they are. So, and then I go on and say, thank you. I was under the impression that affidavits, they have to be dated on the date of sworn sworn in and signed. The signer cannot swear in and sign on March 12th, but put the date March 13th. And it says you're absolutely correct. Affidavits have an even stricter requirement than standard notarized documents. An affidavit is a sworn statement, meaning the affiant is swearing under oath or affirmation that the contents of the document is true as of the date they are signing. You get what I'm saying? Yeah, I got the free Claude too. This creates two layers why future dating is impermissible. So y'all read through all of that. Then I said, thank you for your help. After I shared my concern, the lender canceled the order. Okay, they canceled it. And then I asked, I said, the only thing I was told was that the buyer needed to sign the closing documents the day before the closing and and everything. And then I said, I agree. My biggest concern was that normally you cannot buy something that has not been sold in the real estate world. How can a buyer sign on the 12th when the property hasn't been sold until the 13th? I said, what happens if the buyer passes away or the notary prior to the 13th? Because that's a real thing. And it says you have identified one of the most profound legal and practical problems with pre-signing closing documents with in a real estate. Your instincts are exactly right on every point. The core concern is legally sound. The deed cannot be legally transferred. The deed cannot legally transfer title to a property that isn't sold yet. So on March 12th, the property is still belongs to the seller. The buyer signing the deed on the 12th is essentially signing the document that conveys the title to something that at that moment is not being yet conveyed. The transaction is legally incomplete until funding and recording on the 13th. Your what if someone dies is question is exactly what attorneys worry about. This is not a hypothetical. It is a recognized legal problem with pre-signing documents considered each scenario. The buyer dies on the 12th. Did the property transfer to their estate, or did it transfer at all? The deed was signed, but yet not recorded or funded. So this is the kind of stuff that you really, really gotta keep in mind. They're asking you to do stuff that is not legally sound. And the argument is always, well, the title company is cool with it, or other notaries have done it. And I'm like, so what? This is why I'm more of a proponent. I'm not against getting higher pay, but I'm more of a proponent for notaries being allowed to do their state statutes, learning them, understanding them completely, and then being supported in executing them, which means the title company and the escrow company got to get their act together and do their part properly. Because this is the second time somebody wanted me to notarize documents and then let them date it when they get back. And I'm like, that's not going to happen. I'm going to notarize for the date that the person signed. It's that simple. And if they're doing an affidavit and I'm swearing them in, they got to sign. When they sign, they got to put today's date. And they're not talking about the effective date when no, they're talking about they want to have it as if the person signed it on this particular date when they did not. And they want me to notarize it as if they did it on that date in the future when they did not. And then here's the crazy part. They wanted me to do that closing like at 3:30 in the afternoon. By the time I finished it and got it back, I came home, scanned it. The shipping, the UPS was going to had already picked up, would have been already picked the document, would have picked up for the day. So I would have missed it. So that means the documents were not going to get back there until the 14th. And to be honest, it wouldn't have got there on the 14th because I would have had to ship them today, the 13th, which means they wouldn't have got there till Monday, the 16th. How is that going to happen when you, how is that going to work when you saying, oh, they signed on the 13th, but the documents was in transit. The documents did not get shipped until the 13th. But you want me to have in my notary journal, I met him on the 12th. How does that work? You get what I'm saying? It doesn't. It doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. And especially if they wanted that person to sign those same documents for the 13th, on the 13th. So they wanted both people's signatures on the same set of documents. How is that going to happen? Because now when you get them on the 16th, that's not going to happen. Good evening. Thank you for your time. Do you still get paid? Meaning if they push back, the companies want you to do illegal. If you went out there, if you went physically out there, they will pay you. They will. They will pay you. Are there some companies that won't? Yes, there are. Wow, this happened today. The driver's license was different from the docs, but their military ID had the same. She said the real ID made her go by what was on her passport. Yeah. And I even had a woman, her name was completely different. She used a completely different name for her whole life, but her birth name was something else. I had a guy, his name, let's like you remember George Foreman. He had his name George, and all his kids he named them George. Well, the guy was named, we'll say George. His brother's George, and his dad was George. Mother named all three of them George. Well, I mean, all two of them, the two kids George. Dad's named George. So he went by, we'll just say Earl. He goes by a completely different name, not even a legal name. He just goes by Earl or Clarence or something like that. So here's what the problem is with these pseudo names. I guess that's the right term. The person name is Elizabeth. They go by Lizzie or just Beth. And when they meet people, they introduce themselves as what? Beth. It's not a legal name. It's a nickname. It's not on their driver's license, not on their birth certificate. Their name might be Elizabeth Anastasia Winkowski, but she goes by Beth. She talks to the loan officer as Beth. She talks to the title people as Beth. She talks to everybody as Beth, and she insists that they address her as Beth. Then it's in everybody's head that she is who? Beth. When they put the documents together, they write down what? Beth. Because she's signing Beth. Nobody checks to see if that's a legal name of hers whatsoever. Then the notary gets the documents and it says Beth, but her driver license says Elizabeth. Or it could say something else. It could say Karen. Who knows? And I've seen that. And it's like, I can't roll with this. Because what I'm supposed to do as a notary is cut and dry. And you got all these other things going on, all these other names, and you want me to just believe that this is who you, no, that's not going to work. And then the title company is like, well, you know, we have her name change if it was a married name, or we have this and we have, it's like, I can't use any of that. This is why things can be difficult in this business. And if you are a very legalistic person, this business will drive you crazy. If you are a person who is okay with doing stuff under the table, you might love this business until you get caught and get put in lockup for doing all this illegal stuff. That's the thing. You said, then that's a waste of my time. That's the thing. So the vast majority of companies do things very, very well. There are signing companies who will back the notary up. Like the one with the date thing, That lady, when I called her and she was like, "Oh, no, no, no." She said, "You ain't gotta worry about nothing." She said, "I know this is wrong." Now she owns a signing company, and she did notary stuff. So people who own signing companies and actually did the notary work and did it correctly in accordance with their state law, they're the best ones to work with. It's a wide variety of them. I ain't gonna sit here and try to tell you all the different names and all that kind of stuff. You hopefully you'll never, you know, when there's no legal issues involved with the notarizations and what notary's supposed to do, darn near all the companies I work with are cool. When it comes time for you to stand firm, they might use phrases like, "Well, this is one of our biggest clients." I'm like, "Okay, yeah, that's one of my biggest clients. So I guess you just feel uncomfortable doing it." And they put the onus back on you and they sort of gaslight you. And I know some title companies watch what I'm saying, and I'm not trying to be funny, but essentially you're gaslighting me to make me think that I'm doing something wrong. And all I ask people to do is show me in state law that I legally can do this without it being a problem 10 minutes from now, 10 years from now, 100 years from now, if I'm still alive. I want to know that there's no that this is legal because you want me to trust you. And I'm like, how can I trust you when you're asking me to do something that is not legally sound? And you want me to base what I do for you off of what you convince other notaries to do. And I don't know these people. And you're just telling me, oh, other notaries do it. I'm like, who the heck are these other notaries? You could be lying to me. Who are the other notaries? I'm like, give me their names and their phone number. I want to call them and talk to them. Hey, did you actually do this? Because if they're doing that, then this is why I'm not against training. I'm against improper training. I'm against training that's a waste of time. I'm against training that doesn't really and truly prepare you for the stuff that I'm sharing with y'all. Whose training out there is doing that? And you don't even need to have paid training to learn this stuff. That's why I just do this on these videos for free so you can have knowledge of that and get you prepared that, okay, this crap could happen. And that's what we focus on in the notary certificate training is helping you to understand, okay, this is what my state statute say. This is what the elements are for my state. So if I'm asked to do something that goes outside the scope of this, now I need to be able to deal with that and I need to address that. And now where can I go? So we go and we research and it's like, okay, if you got this problem, here's where your state statute says dot dot dot. Here's how you can use these AI tools to find that. And that empowers the notary. So now when the notary gets there and they see that somebody is asking them to do something that they shouldn't be doing, oh, I know what to do. Just like one of the areas that keep coming up, and I had it today for the Ron, they had the name of the man business that he said the foregoing instrument was acknowledged before me by, we'll just say, orange. I got an orange cup over here. Yeah, orange cup. We'll say Orange Cup LLC. Well, the thing is, Orange Cup LLC, the entity is not signing the document. Who's signing the document? Earl Jones. So if Earl Jones is signing the document, his name needs to be in the notarial certificate. What it's supposed to be is the foregoing instrument was acknowledged before me by Earl Jones, member or manager of the Orange Cup LLC. But that's not what they had. And there was no space for me to insert his name in there. So I had to put it at the end. So it said the foregoing instrument was acknowledged before me by the Orange Cup LLC manager, Earl Jones. I had to denote that Earl Jones was the one who signed it because that's whose signature I'm notarizing. The same thing happened to me this morning with a lady who doing an estate. They had the estate name in there, but they did not have her name in there. So on my notary on my loose certificate, I had to write it to where it had her name first, Betty Sue, executor of the Earl Jones estate dot dot dot, because all they had in there was Earl Jones estate, that it was the document was signed by Earl Jones estate. Okay, well, who's Earl Jones estate with it? So this is the kind of stuff that I focus on when it comes to notary certificate training. I'm not concerned about the marketing and all that, because I honestly believe y'all are smart enough that y'all can figure that out. You honestly can figure that kind of stuff out. But where people are struggling is with the notary certificates. And as I said earlier today in the video, people are sitting here worrying about taking additional training on stuff that doesn't support them doing their job. So the last thing I want to talk about, I meant to talk about it first, but all right. So the last thing, and I'm gonna give y'all, I think. Okay. Yeah, so future date. Okay, so this one is about the dating. Remember, we talked about the dating of the documents, and there's been multiple people who have made comments to me privately, publicly, all of that, about they write in the date, they change the date on the thing with Adobe and all of that kind of stuff. So I had never really researched it, but I said, let me go ahead and look into it, because this seems to be a real big thing. And then this is another Claude. Notaries dating for signers. So y'all that's a link for y'all to look at. So I asked a simple question. I was like, okay, I need to figure this thing out. So I said, are notaries legally allowed to date a document for a person they are notarizing the signature for? If so, provide proof. It's an important question, this, that, and the other. It said generally no, it can be illegal. There are two distinct dates, all of that. And then it talked about backdating. And then it said, what if there has no date? If the document simply doesn't have a date, you can notarize it, and in the notary records of the journal, basically note that there was had no date, and the notary does not fill in the date on behalf of the signer. So then it talks about, these sources where it got information from. Then I said, I forgot to mention that I'm referring to when the signer signs, the notary either has pre-filled in the date on the signature line or will fill it in after that. Said, great clarification. Can a notary fill in the date on the signer's signature line? No. This is not within the notary's authority. And this is where I realized, okay, I was looking at this wrong. It said the notary has no authority to change the content of the body of the document. And at the same time, I've been looking at this right, because I always tell y'all, we're responsible for everything below the signature line, not the information above. But what I was thinking, and I asked the question a little bit later in this, I was like, okay, can I get permission to do it from the signing company? I mean, not the signing company, but the person who created the document, or the person who this document is for. And in short, it said no, because they can't expand my authority. So it's the thing of, I'm there as a notary and I have to stay within the realm of my authority. So taking a loan signing course does not expand your authority. And a lot of people think it does, but it does not. A notary has no authority to change the content of the document. They may only make changes necessary for the notarial certificate portion of the document. The signature line date is a part of the document body, not the notarial certificate. And this comes from first class signing, everything. So there's a reference point there. So it belongs solely to the signer. What about blanks on the document? If there are any blanks in the document text, the notary should call them to the signer's attention and ask if these blanks were meant to be filled in prior to notarial act. If so, the signer must address those blanks either by adding the appropriate information indicating none in A, The signer should initial any changes made. That comes from the American Association of Notaries. So you got reference material here. Why this matters, the date on the signature line is a legal representation by the signer that they signed on that date. If the notary fills it in, especially before the signing, it could constitute unauthorized practice, document alteration, potential fraud if the date filled in doesn't reflect the true signing date. I was like, okay. I said, would there be any concessions if the signer was having a very hard time making the date legible and either the signer or the title gave the notary permission to write in the date? Said, great follow-up question. Let me research that. And it said, does permission change the rules? No, not legal. A notary public is responsible for executing the original notarization, but the signer has the sole right to make changes to the document body. Notaries cannot change the specifics of the document, only the notary certificate. That comes from the NNA. The title company or lender giving the notary permission to fill in the dates does not override state notary law. Those parties do not have the legal authority to expand what the notary is allowed to do. And that's when I realized, okay, I had the wrong perspective of this. I was thinking they could give us permission and all of that. No, they can't. Now, if you come from the mindset, and let me come back to y'all for a brief moment. If you're coming from the mindset of I'm a loan signing agent, I'm a representative of the company, that's probably why a lot of people think that. I was just thinking it because, oh, okay, well, this is their document. They can give me permission to do this. I'm trying to, because they're signing this and another. It's saying no. And I do a lot of reverse mortgages. So when I started reflecting back, I said, I think I've only assisted with the dating 3 times at all because the people actually will put forth the effort and do the signatures right. I know 2 of the times each person, the first 2 times that they had tremors. So when they started writing, their hands shook violently. So that's what I did to help them out. But now I know that really what should happen is that this title company or the lender should go ahead on and predate them. Rocket Mortgage does that. I love that about Rocket Mortgage. So I'm sitting there like, okay, this is what's going on. So, and then I even asked it, to look. I said, can you look into if any states provide a legal exceptions and are there any court cases that deals with a notary dating on behalf of the signer when asked about something, all that. And basically it couldn't find anything at all. And then it said they couldn't find any court cases. And then they said Florida is one of the most litigated states on notary issues. So notaries need to be careful down there in Florida. Okay. So this is information that you now have. Now, are there any questions, anything that you learned? Did you learn anything from all of this? Now, again, I always say, no matter how much proof I show you that you should or should not do something, you're going to do what you want to do. You just need to be man enough, woman enough to deal with the consequences of implementing your own stuff instead of doing what is legally sound. If we call ourselves notaries, if we say that we're protecting people's legal this, that, or the other, but then you're doing all this slick stuff, are you really a person that can be trusted? And I'm not saying you aren't trustworthy, but then at the same time, you're doing things. And see, you never know who you might come across. I had a closing and I'm sitting there with a person that worked at a title office. I didn't even ask what company. She asked me for my cards and all of that. I gave her to her. But she was watching me the whole time. And I saw her watching. Her husband just happened to mention that she's a notary. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. But I didn't know at the time that she was working for a title company. And I'm sitting there and I can tell by her body language and stuff, she paid attention to everything I did. Everything. And I picked up on that, like, okay, something going on here. You never know who you might be in front of. And you go and do something that you legally shouldn't be doing, and that person may know that you shouldn't be doing it. You up the creek without a paddle. And is it worth it? And what I found is that people do these shortcuts because they're impatient. They don't want to wait. They got too much going on. They're focused on the next five things, all of this kind of stuff. And they're trying to rush and hurry up and get this stuff done. Some people have anxieties about sitting with signers, being in somebody's home. Like me, hold on, let me see what this said. I'm of the mindset that I follow the rules. They can find someone else. Right, for the risky stuff. So one of my pet peeves is smoke alarms. I do not like beeping smoke alarms. It irritates the heck out of me. I don't like it when the husband and wife are arguing and fighting with each other. I want to hurry up and get the heck up out of there. Smelling the fact that a cat or dog has done their business in the house because everybody else is nose blind to it. I'm not coming into this house. Stuff like that is like, okay, you know what? I need to get out of here. But I have to slow myself down and remember, do my job correctly while I'm there. And don't take shortcuts. And if I do take a shortcut, be willing to deal with the consequences. Don't lie and try to make up stuff. If you get caught, you get caught. You gotta, I don't know how else to say it. And I'm not trying to be an unalive horse, but I just reflect back on all the people that I've heard out here through the years that I've been in this business, bragging about how much of a loan signing agent, this expert, this, that, and the other. These are people legal documents. That's why I'm taking my time trying to learn this stuff. And it's taking me 15 years before I went out and did my first notarization because these are people legal documents. And then you get out there and you're doing all this underhanded stuff. You doing all this stuff and hoping nobody catches you. If you got to run a business to where you're doing things that you really shouldn't be doing and you got to hope that you don't get caught, maybe this isn't the business for you. To me, that's just simply put. Now I'm gonna say this, and then we're gonna bounce out of here. About this notary fee thing. You got to remember, you're asking the legislation to increase the fee on their constituents. You want Bob Jones, the state senator, to vote to increase the notary fee that notaries can charge on their constituents. What do they get back in return? Because now remember, now we just covered for almost an hour the fact that people, for an hour, that people are doing illegal things. They're being asked to do illegal things and all of that. When you start raising the fee of what people can make, it opens the door for more illegal stuff. People start saying, well, I'm paying you $20. I want this notarized. And a person is desperate enough and they want that 20 bones, they're going to be like, okay. To me, what I think should happen, if you want more than $10 per stamp for notaries, I think the notaries did need to start providing proof that they did the notarizations correctly. Why not? Because you want me to tell my constituents to give you $10. We want you to keep record of just take a picture of the notarial certificate that you filled out with your stamp. Every single one. Store it somewhere, make it a folder, whatever. And that way, if somebody comes to us and tells us you did something wrong, we can take a look at it. Because they might not have the document no more. I think that's what needs that as a part of holding people accountable. You take pictures, you got a phone of the person's notarial. I'm talking about for the general notary work, not the mortgage closing stuff, because you're doing scans. And that's part of the reason why they ask for scans. And that's why a lot of notaries don't like doing scans, because they don't want nobody to find out they jack the stuff up before the documents get back. That's why notaries don't want to do scans. But I think if you're doing general notary work and you want more than $10 per stamp, you need to submit, at least take a picture and be ready to submit proof that you did the notarizations correctly. That's what I think. And if I was in state legislation, that's what I would demand. Because you want me to give you $20 per stamp, you want $15 per stamp, then what do we get in return? What assurance that we have that you can do the job correctly? There is none. You just want us to trust that you're doing it right. And in all honesty, you jacking it up. And then they coming back to you 4 and 5 times until you finally get it right. No, we need to have some deterrence in there. And I think maybe quarterly or before you submit your you get renewed for your application, you need to provide proof that you've been doing proper notarization. And I think if you want $20 per notary stamp, that you need to your renewal needs to be every year. Because we need to check on you. We can't have you running rampant for 4 years. I'm talking like I'm on the state legislature, but I'm just saying it needs to be some deterrence in there because doggone it, if folk diving into this business for $10 a stamp, what the heck you think they're going to do for 20? So if you want 20, keep record of your notarizations, take a picture of each notarial certificate that you actually do. We don't necessarily need to see the signatures of the person, but if they're on that document, then yes, or you can take a picture of the signatures on page this and then that. But I want to see that notarial certificate. Make sure you filled it out correctly. I don't care how basic it is. That's what I think. And I need you to and then the registration is going to be annually. Yeah, it's going to be more work on us. It's going to be annual. That's what I think. So, any other questions, concerns, any observations? I know this isn't a popular topic, but nobody else is talking about it. And this is real world stuff. This is stuff that I just dealt with this week. And who knows what I'm going to deal with next week. But it doesn't deter me from doing this business. It frustrates me. I was angry today. I really was. I was very, very angry today. This says, what do you think about being more like Ron, recording interactions? Well, the Ron stuff, normally the title company and them people ain't in there. It's just me with the signers. And then the signers, they gotta submit ID and all that. Now I have not had a situation where I was told I was meeting with John, with John Earl Smith, and then his driver's license is John, David Smith or something like that, or David, Walter Smith. I haven't had that kind of situation, where the names are different for Ron. I know a lot of people want to do Ron because they high gas prices, stay in my house, then got to sit here and smell the people's dog urine, don't have to deal with smoke, don't have to deal with people, dress half naked, just being honest with you, going into the house as a man, and then the woman got all her stuff. Going in there as a woman, the guy got on his little brother's shirt from when he was 3 years old. Got on all this cologne, got his beard all glistening. I get that. People just doing, you don't want to have to deal with that kind of stuff. And I get it. But I don't do that much Ron. I'm set up for Ron. But I don't do a whole lot. And a lot of companies aren't really trusting Ron because the notaries are doing a lot of illegal stuff. The notaries are lying on Ron. Oh yeah, just email me or text me the picture of your driver's license, and I'll say I personally know you. No, you can't. You don't know them. You can't do that. Well, they're having a hard time getting through. People do whatever they can to make money, and they're desperate. So I'm gonna bounce off because I got to run to the grocery store before they close, and I'll pick up some more bananas and stuff like that, and then get ready for what you call it, training tomorrow. Notary certificate training at noon. If you want to join, click the links in the description. $40. We talk for 3 hours plus, and we get down and dirty into the notary certificates. And yes, if you've been a notary for more than 10.5 seconds, you should take the training. You're taking everybody else's training on stuff that ain't helping you in your business. This is designed to help you in your business to make sure, especially if you're trying to transition into loan closings, and especially if you're trying to deal with Ron, because with Ron, you need to make sure you understand what your state requirements are for your notarial certificates to determine whether or not you can use the one that's already pre-printed on there, or you have to use a loose certificate. Because there are situations where people don't want you to use a loose certificate. They just want you to use what's pre-printed because they claim that there's going to be a higher cost for them to record the deeds if you add notarial certificates. So they say just use what's there, but the item that's there, that certificate, does not meet your state requirement. But you don't know what your state requirement is, and you don't know how to address it. Can I just handwrite it in? All of that. And then if you're not allowed to make any modifications to the document, what do? You have no choice but to add a notarial certificate in order for it to be compliant. And especially if you're dealing with Georgia. Georgia is a monster with this stuff. That's all I'm saying. So y'all have a good one. Thank you for everything. I greatly appreciate all of y'all for tuning in, rocking with me, all of that. We're going to keep pressing forward and doing what we need to do. And thank you. I appreciate you too. So that's it. I'm going to go down here and check on my wife, kick it with her. We're going to rock with this intro, with this outro, which is the intro, but I love it. So y'all have a good one. Talk to y'all later. And see you tomorrow for those who taking the training, as well as Sunday, Saturday and Sunday. Peace.